Hey, this is Passy from Passy's World of ICT, the guy with the white hat. And today we're here with the second half of the password user administration system. And in this one, we're going to add the actual functions on to that XML login user system we built in part one, where we had the applicants in the top in a DataGrid view and our user details down the bottom of the form. So we're going to be adding on to those navigation bars to do saving, deleting, adding, and all of those sorts of things. Okay, now this is going to be a long lesson, so it might be best to play it at like 1.5 speed. So on the tool cog on YouTube, when you're playing it, just set it to 1.5 or 1.75 because we're not the world's fastest talker, and YouTube won't change the voice pitch. It'll leave it the same and make it really good. So at the end of the part one lesson previously, and of course it's important you've already done that lesson and the ones leading up to it, so that you've got the password administration system up to this point where it's reading in the applicants file and showing that in one of these spreadsheet type views, which is called a DataGrid view up the top here. And down the bottom we can flick through the registered users, and that's in a data table view, right? So you need both of these. Now, the context of our lesson has been that we've got these applicants that are applying to join up, and if they're okay, we're going to add them into here and make them registered users, and we're going to do the functionality for that this lesson. But look, that's our context, but you could easily use the ideas we're going to teach you here to do something like if you had, say, jobs, these jobs that needed doing, and workers that were allocated to the jobs in a job scheduling system, and whether the jobs are being paid for or not. Or perhaps you've got some sort of ordering system, and these could be like orders up here with products in them or something like that, and you've got your customers down here down the bottom, and you want to see two things at once on the screen and be able to look at what's going on in between them and do different functions to different files. So this is a 2-file system, and we're able to do some functions on it. So it's got the Applicants XML external file where all of these applicants are stored, and they're all coming into this DataGrid view, and we can use this scroll bar at the right to go down and see all of them. And in the bottom half we've got the UserDetails.xml external file for when we've had applicants that are now registered to use the system, and we've got their user IDs and passwords stored in here, and that all shows up in this bottom panel. And this is the panel that the system administrator uses to add new people on, delete a user if they had to, delete their login, maybe change their password if there's a request to do that, and to do other things as well, like we'll see in this lesson. So in the part 2 lesson, we need to add this function. We need to sort that DataGrid view so that all of the false new applicants that aren't registered yet, they're set to false, they come up first in the list, because the administrator is not really going to care about the true ones that we want to sort down to the bottom because they've already been done and set up. We need to enable the plus and save icons to register a new user onto the system. So in that bottom data table is a navigation bar. We need to get the plus and the save icons on that working so we can add a new user. And we also need to, when a new user is added, we want to automatically, in the DataGrid view where the application was, to now set their ApplRegistered status to true, because they're now a registered system user and no longer an applicant. So we need to do that. And if a user's application is rejected, we want to be able to set ApplRegistered to a rejected status. And finally, we want to, when we make a new applicant, and just after we've registered them on and set them up with the user ID and password, we want to be able to just click a button, and in a text box it can pop up and give us a pre-formatted email that we can then copy and paste and just send to the user. The administrator could just easily copy and paste what's in that text box into whatever email app they're using, Gmail or Hotmail or whatever, and they can email that user and tell them, hey, you just got put on the system, this is your user ID and your password. Okay, so this is going to be a long lesson getting all of these functions done, and some of them we found weren't exactly straightforward to do. So you may want to pause the video at several stages. You may want to use the index, the timeline index, which is in the description, YouTube description for this video, so that you can just look at different sections or maybe go back to sections. But it might be a bit much to try and do this all in one hit. Perhaps just do part of it, note down where you're up to, come back later into the index and continue on. So that's going to complete our user application system. So the first job was sorting that data grid view, because at the moment, the file and the grid view, when it's loaded up, is just the order that the people are added into. And so what we want is all the false new people up the top so we can see them and work on them. And everyone that's registered or they've been rejected or they've been deleted, we want to put all those people down the bottom. So the best way to do that is to sort this file just after it comes in. So your screen will probably just be showing 3 records because that's all we needed, but we've just stretched ours out here to show all of them. So at the moment, we've got these users that are false here. We've got Sharon and Barry who are already registered, so they're set to true. And then we've got a new one down the bottom, Dougie, that's false. So we want to sort this screen because we want Dougie to go up there so that he's with all the other false ones at the top, and the administrator can just get right on and do the 4 false ones, because the 4 ones, including Dougie, will all be up in the top half. Okay, so that's what we need to do, and we need some coding to do that. All right, so at the moment in the admin form loads, or in the admin form.vb program, we'll be doing 90% of our changes today in that program, which is part of our system we've been working on. Now, when it's loading up, we've got it reading at the moment into dtab applicant DataGrid View. That's the name of that data grid if you look at its properties on the form. What we've got is we're reading that external XML file straight into the data set for that DataGrid view that's bound to it. Now what we want to do is, straight after we've got it in the DataGrid view there, what we want to do is we just want to sort it. So this is the code which had to be used. We have to have a me dot or it didn't work. So that's the name of it from the form. We want to do dot sort, and then we want to sort on the first column. Now remember, VB starts numbering at 0, not at 1. So we're doing columns bracket 0. And then this last part underneath here, that sets it to ascending. Now I think originally we had an underscore here for line continuation, but I don't know whether we've had an update to VB or what's going on, but it seems that VB takes them out after you've put them in for some reason. So it doesn't seem to need these underscore line continuations, but I'd recommend putting in the underscore, pressing enter, and then just seeing what happens. It might stay in there, but ours all seem to get removed. I don't know whether they've had an update to Visual Studio that happened behind the scenes or what. So that should fix it so that it gets sorted as soon as it's loaded up to the data grid. And if we test that out and run it, we can see what's happened is Dougie's now shot up to here. He's been sorted in the F's for false. So all the false ones are up the top, and the true ones, which we don't really need to pay attention to because they're already added onto the system, are down the bottom. So that's all worked beautifully, and that's our first task done. We've got the data grid view into a sorted order. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we want to enable the administrator to register up a new user. So we've got Jasmine here, who's false. She's our first false one. So she's a new user who's applied. Her reasons look fine when we expand that out and look at them. So we're going to add them on. The administrator is going to add them on. So down in this section, they just need her name, Jasmine, and her user ID and a password. They don't need the other information. All right, now you can actually highlight these and do Control-C, Control-V and paste them into the text boxes, kind of do 1, 2, 3 and paste them in, and then see that this is record number 4, so you make it user number 4. And you do that after you've clicked the plus icon to get a new blank record. So click plus, and then you can manually copy and paste. But look, it'd be much nicer if we could just have a one-click thing where as soon as you wanted to add a user, if our cursor was on Jasmine up here in the applicants, it's just going to grab her name, her user ID, her password, work out automatically what the next sequence number is in the file, and put that in for the user number. So it just happens, bang, one click, all of the data's in there, and that's the way it should be. And we can actually program our system to do that for us. So first, before we do that, we need to have an extra icon here on this navigation bar. We need a copy paste icon because we're going to click plus, then we're going to click copy paste, and then it's going to make the record data all set up for us automatically. So you need to click on that navigation bar. Now up in the top right hand corner, there's a tiny little left hand rectangle arrow that's there. And you click on that, and we're going to click on insert standard items, all right? And when you click insert standard items, what it's going to do is it's going to give you all of the items here which can go on the nav bar. Now, some of them we've got already, like the plus and the delete and the save. We want to have this one here, copy paste, but we don't want all these other ones. So what you have to do is you have to click on each of these, like click on that question mark one right here. And then if you press the keyboard delete key while that's clicked on, that'll disappear. And then we need to click on this one and make it disappear. Click on the scissors and make them disappear. Get all of them to disappear, but we still want to keep our plus, our cross for delete, our save, and we want to keep this one here, the copy paste. And you can also drag that copy and paste across and move it. And we've just moved it so it's right next to the plus key here. So we did that as well. So that's our new nav bar all set up now, and we've got this copy paste icon which we can double click and add some code to. So we double click that copy paste icon on that nav bar, and we need the following code. Now what this does is that it goes along and works out the current row which our cursor's on in that DataGrid view, and it takes that, right, and down here, so we've got that selected current row, and it's going to get the index, and then using that index, we can actually copy what's on that row, like the string username. We can locate that because that's in the second column, which will be cells brackets 1, because remember cells bracket 0 is the first column. The Apple's registered whether it's true, false, but we want cells 1. And we can copy that onto the form into username text box, which is what that username is at the bottom of the form where we're trying to add the new user. We can go across to the fifth column, which will actually be cells 4, grab the user ID and put that into the text box on the form, and we can get the password from the next column along, cells 5, and put that in the text box down the bottom of the form as well. So we're just working out here, okay, we clicked on a row in that DataGrid view at the moment, and that is the current row, and then we can find out what its index is, grab all these specific values off that row and put them in the text boxes which are down the bottom of the form. All right, now we also want to set up that user number. So the user number is a little bit tricky. We add some more code here, and what we do is we just set the index as 0, and for each row that's in the bottom one, the DS users table 0 means the first data table, which is the one we've got. We don't have more than one table in the DS users, but you could. So just to get that first table, the one and only table we've got, you have table 0 in the rows, and it's just going to go through all there, and it's basically counting all the rows. So it's just going to read through all of those user details we've already got set up for registered users and work out how many of them are. So if there's only 3 of them, we need to know then that the new one we're adding is number 4. So we take the count of how many there were and we just add 1 onto it. And that's going to tell us the number we need to make for our user number, all right? So just a little loop to spin through the data table of user details at the bottom of the form and just count how many there are and then add 1 on. All right, so let's see how this all works. So the idea is we're on Jasmine Lennox, she's false, she's the one we want to add on, so we make sure we're clicked on her and she's highlighted as the current row in the DataGrid view, and then we click the plus button, and what that does is it makes a brand new record here, and you can see it is number 4 because there are actually at the moment 3 records in the file. And this is much quicker and easier than manually copy and paste, because what we do now is the next thing we do is we click this copy paste icon we set up and that we've just added all that code onto to work out, oh yeah, you're on this row, columns brackets 1 is this thing, so grab what's in there. So it grabs Jasmine Lennox, puts that in for the name, grabs the user ID, puts that into the text box for the name, grabs the password, puts that in the text box for the name, and then for that user number, remember we had that little loop that spun round and counted how many records were in there and worked out that this next record we're adding is number 4, so it puts a 4 in there. So our whole record is set up for us, and all we need to do now is click the save icon and have some code for that. So that's much easier than individual quick and paste. It's just a 1-button click with this copy paste icon, and bang, all the data you need off that current row you've got selected is in there. So that's pretty cool. We're just taking a few selected items out of this grid up the top, and we're putting it into this separate one down the bottom. So that's kind of really neat. And all we need to do now is just do some programming code for the save icon so that this is in the data table, but we need to save it out to the external user details file. All right, now the save icon is very similar to a previous lesson where we did writing XML files, and all you need to do is double click on that save icon that's in that user details navigation bar down the bottom part of the form there, and we just do all this stuff here. First, you stop any further editing of the data by using this piece of code here, the binding source which controls that data table for the users. Just make sure there's an end edit on that. And then you need try, catch, end try. So basically we're just taking everything that's in the data set users, that one table we've got, and bang, writing that out to this particular XML file. And if that all works, we say it's successful. But if there's some sort of error while that happens, it'll go down the exception and give us the exception message instead. So whenever you're writing a file, you always use that try, catch, end try processing. So if we test this now, so we've done all that stuff that we just showed you, like we did plus and we did copy paste, and we had all the Jasmine stuff in there, and we've now clicked the save button and it says the data was saved successfully. So that code we added onto the save icon here looks as though it worked fine, but we just need to check the external file, the user details file here. And when we check out that with all the users that are in there, yes, it's great. Jasmine has been added onto the end with a correct user ID and password, and she's been set correctly as record number 4. So the record numbers go 1, 2, 3, 4, and there we are. So user details XML file, that's been updated successfully. And don't know why it's called XMLS there. We'll just fix that a little bit up and get onto the next slide. Alrighty, so if the administrator accidentally tries to add Jasmine for a second time, we get a program crash, because in that data table we set up for the users, when we were setting up DS users, in the previous lesson, we made user ID a primary key. And so saving a second time, using that same key, that same user ID of Jazzy is going to be blocked by VB, and that causes a crash. So if you accidentally try and click that save button again and do the processing for Jasmine, you get a program crash, and this is what happens. This is the message you get. So we need to fix that up. We need to add some try catch processing around this as well, so that we can prevent that program crash. So where we had that end edit, we just encapsulate that with some try catch. Now, if there is an exception, we suspect there's a duplicate key error, and we need the user administrator to just flick through and check that that user ID is not already registered, which they should find is true for Jasmine. So yeah, we just have that try catch processing in there just to stop that program crash, and that'll be all good. So that'll fix that little part. So, you know, you're working with files, you're working with primary keys. Yeah, look, it gets a little bit complicated. File handling in any language, not just VBNet, can get complicated. And you just got to kind of think about this slowly, work through it, write a bit of code, test it, see if there's an issue. If there's an issue, figure out what it is, and then fix it up like we've just done here. So when we test this, it works fine, because Jasmine was already saved on there. So if it's record number 5 and we try and add her again as the 5th record and do save, it's going to say suspected duplicate key error. Check that the user ID is not already registered. Okay, so it won't save her again because we've already got her saved once as record 4, as we saw previously. So that's all good. Now, once we've added a person in, because remember, Jasmine was false in that top data grid thing, and that's how we knew she was a newbie, and we needed to add her in. Now we need to, up in that data grid view, we need to now set her ApplRegistered value to true, so the system administrator doesn't accidentally try and add her again. So we can do that as part of our processing. While we're down saving and adding her into the user details, we can also change some stuff which is up in the data grid view. So what we do is, when we're going to write out to that UserDetails.xml file, because it's time to save our new user, we're also going to do a subroutine called set the applicant as registered. So as long as this save worked, we'll be going on to a separate subroutine which sets the applicant as registered. Now what that subroutine is going to do is it's going to work out the index number of that row that we're currently clicked on for that new user we were adding. So it does that by going to the DataGrid view and doing the method .currentRow.index, and that'll get us the index value. And then what we need to do is this processing here, which is a little bit kind of indirect when you first look at it, but this is the way which works. We need to have a string called selected row, and that's a DataGrid view type string. And we then just take the current row and we put it into that string, okay? And that way we can then, from that string, work out cell 0, okay? And change that at cell 0, that first thing, ApplRegistered, change it into true. So we want to set that to true. At the moment it would have been false, so we're just setting it to true. And then we're going to write everything out to the Applicants file, okay? So we just do some try, catch, end, try using the Applicants XML file. We're just taking that DS Applicants, which happens to be in a DataGrid view at the moment, and we're just taking everything in the DataGrid view, bang, put it into Applicants XML file and write it out with some try, catch. All right, so we're just working out what row we were on for that one we were adding. For the first cell or column value in there, which at the moment would have been false, we're just bang, changing that over to true and then saving the whole thing to commit that update. So what will happen here is that when we're adding a new person, Tiana Barlow here, it says data is saved to the user's file, okay, but she's still false there at the moment. And that's all going to be good, that she's gone into user details. All right, but the next step that should happen now is it should, because she's been saved okay as a new user, it should now set that ApplRegistered up here to true. That should be the next thing that happens. So let's continue on. And after we save and that save's finished and we click OK, we'll get another message pop up that tells us the Applications file is updated. So that's updated to register true. And if we go and look up the top there, we can see Tiana Barlow is now true. So she's someone who's registered on to the system. And there she is right down there in the user details section of the screen. So that's all working really good. And if we browse the Applicants XML file, which is where this DataGrid is hooked up to, we can see that for Tiana, it has changed ApplRegistered to true in the output file, as well as changing it in the DataGrid view in memory, which is coming up on this screen. So that code we added is all really sweet. We can add a new user now, copy paste their details in, save them, they get saved into the user details file, and then straight after they're saved, it goes up to the Applicants file, sets their ApplRegistered to true, and it saves that out to the Applicants XML file. So that's come together really well and working really nicely, okay? So that's good. So look, it may come up that the administrator also needs to delete a registered user. It's going to be pretty highly unlikely. And they could manually edit the XML file to do that. Now, why would they be deleting someone? I don't know, maybe someone joined up and they were sending harassing emails to another member or something like that, or they did something crazy and so they're not going to be on the system anymore, so they want to delete them. But we've got that red X on our navigation bar, so we might as well just put some programming on that so that we are able to delete a registered user. So that red X delete processing though isn't nearly as easy as saving a new user was, okay? This involves quite a few steps, and you may need to work through this slowly, re-look at parts of the video and take a break after this section because there are quite a few steps, so be warned. So first, we always, whenever you do a delete, it's kind of standard programming practice that you need an "Are you sure?" message pop up, and they can say yes or no, because they might have just accidentally clicked that red X button. And maybe they want to say no and just abort and back out the delete. Now, if they want to do that, there's a certain coding we need to do to restore back what used to be there. If they say yes and want to go ahead, there's another set of coding we need to do. Now, we're not going to do it all at once. We will do it bit by bit and test it as we go. So if the delete's a yes, there will be a problem if you delete someone in the middle of the user number values because there'll then be a gap, and so we're going to have to renumber all of the user records. So that's kind of an extra bit of work which we weren't really thinking immediately would happen, but it does happen. And we need to save the modified data table. When you delete it, it only is deleted in the data table. You've got to do a save straight afterwards or it doesn't commit the delete. And we need to get it deleted from the external file as well as being deleted on the screen. And then up in the applicants, you know how when we save someone when they were new and we went and set them to ApplRegistered true, for these people that are deleted, we're going to set them to ApplRegistered UDeleted. Now, why do we use UDeleted and we just didn't use deleted? For that sorting order, remember we wanted all the false ones to come up the top. And if we just use deleted, the deleted would come up the top in the sort. So we just made it UDeleted. And I think also we just need to make a small change here because I think it's U capital deleted is what we're going to be doing. So yeah, a few little things that needed changing here. So to do the main part of this delete processing, you double click on that red X icon on the navigation bar and that'll give you the click event for it. And then we need to add in all this code. So we're going to save the user ID off first of the record being deleted. So we're just going to dimension string saved user ID. Grab what's in that user ID text box and just save what it was because we are going to be needing to know that later on. All right, so remember if they want to back out a deletion and say no, we're going to have to know which one they were trying to delete. And we're also going to set that at the moment, we haven't deleted them yet. So Boolean user deleted is false because we haven't done the delete yet. All we've done is click the red X delete button. So we have this pop-up message box, but it's a bit different to usual. It gives two options, yes or no. And if they pick yes, well, that's when we need to delete the record. But the thing is that what we found in a previous lesson was that it's a bit sticky here. VBNet just flags or tags the record that it's going to be deleted and it doesn't actually delete it yet. You have to tell the user to hit the save button afterwards to commit and save that delete, and then the delete really happens. So we're going to give them this message, record is marked for deletion, click the save icon to save changes and permanently delete the record, okay? So it's just the way VB works. It doesn't actually get rid of it straight away. It just sort of puts a little marker on it that, yep, we're going to delete this one, so it kind of doesn't show up when you flick through your records on your screen, but it's actually still there. And if you try and do a save right now to the file, it'll actually save out that one which you wanted to delete, so it doesn't work properly. You have to click the save icon separately after you've done the red X. So look, there's quite a few steps, so we're just going to test them one by one. So at the moment, we're just going to test this bit here, that we click the red X, and if they say yes, we should get that message, all right? So we're going to check that out and see how we go. So here we are. We've got Tiana Barlow up here. There's the red X, okay? We've clicked on that and it's asking us, confirm the delete. Delete the record for Tiana Barlow, and we're going to say yes. And when we say yes, what will happen is that we get this message, delete in progress, the record is marked for deletion. We have to click that save icon to save the changes and permanently delete the record. So we click OK on that message and then we go and click that save icon and it tells us that the data is saved to the user details file, but that's the whole set of registered users. So it's a bit strange because we're sort of just seeing Jasmine here. We got rid of Tiana, and so the next one back, record number 4, was Jasmine. But it's actually saving the whole file out. And it's very important that after the red X that they hit this save. If they don't do that, it's not going to commit the change. And anyway, if they have clicked save OK straight after the red X, everything is good. And if you look at the file, well, we didn't have room to put it all here, but this is the bottom of the file where it ends. And Jasmine's the last user in there. Tiana, who was the last user at position number 5, record 5, she's now gone. So the delete worked fine. So that's all good. So our first part of the processing is finished, but we've still got a few more things to do with the delete processing. It's not nearly as straightforward as the save processing. Now, here's where we run into our first problem. Remember when we were saving a new user, we put in that really cool automatic code to go and update the ApplRegistered in the applicants to true? Well, on this one, our cursor happened to just be sitting on Joey Peterson while we were doing the delete of Tiana. But what's happened is when we did that save, that code kicked in automatically, and Joey, who was a new user sitting on false, it's changed him to true, okay? So it all did the delete of Tiana beautifully, but we didn't realize we also had some code in there to update applicants ApplRegistered to true whenever we hit that save button, and it's done it to Joey. It set him true, but he's never got added. We never added and saved him. So that's a real problem that we've got this error. So when we whenever we hit that save button, we've got this automatic thing here, set applicant as registered. And whoever the cursor happened to be on up the top, we weren't paying any attention to that because we were working down the bottom and wanted to delete someone. That person's going to get hit up as true and saved. So we need to fix that up. What we need to do is we only want to set this applicant as registered if at the moment they're trying to actually save a new record for a new applicant, right? We don't want this code to be done if they're just deleting records like we just were, or if they're maybe just modifying a record. They might just have a record up there on the bottom of the screen and someone's asked for their password to be changed. So they're just going to change their password and save it, all right? But we don't want them doing any of this stuff to the applicants unless they're specifically adding a brand new user onto the system. So we need to add some coding to take care of that. The first thing we need to do is add a new public variable to the start of our program that any subroutine can access. So we're going to have this one Boolean adding new user equals false. So this is going to be an indicator, like a little light that goes on and flashes on the system administrator's desk. Hey, we're adding a new user, we're adding a new user. So if that's the case, we know we've got to update the applicants file to say ApplRegistered true. Okay? And we're only going to set this to true when the plus icon is clicked. So when they click that plus icon down the bottom navigator bar there to say, hey, we're adding a new record, we'll set Boolean adding new user is true so that we know, hey, we're adding a new user this time right at the moment. And then what can happen is that when we're doing that stuff, right, to write out the user record, if we're adding a new user, then we'll go to that set applicant as registered. So we're not going to go there every time now. We're only going to go there if we're adding a new user, and we'll set their application to true, that they've been added and they're now registered. And then what we also need to do is, after this is finished, we need to just set adding new user to false, because we finished adding a new user and setting up their application registered to true. So we need to turn that flashing light on the desk off because the job's been done now, all right? So we do that as well. So you need to carefully add that code into the current save icon subroutine processing. And look, because of all this coding, there's going to be a lot of changes and fixes and tested. For this lesson, it's probably best to go to the link in the YouTube video and get the downloads for the lesson, just so you've got the full set of code there to read through and check if you get lost and your code isn't working out as you follow this lesson and put your code in. Really recommend getting those downloads for the lesson, just so you've got that safety factor for yourself to make your life easier. Okay, so when we test this fix, the first test we're going to fix is that we wanted to get that problem fixed so that when we delete, like Jasmine here, it's not going to go and change Dougie to true, right? Because we're not adding a new record, we just hit the red X and want to delete Jasmine. So we just skipped showing you all the message box steps and everything here, but we've clicked OK on them. And what's happened is the record now ends at number 3. Jasmine at number 4 is gone, so that's all good. We've deleted it here out of the user details. And notice up the top, good old Dougie Dimwit, he didn't get changed to true. He stayed on false. So that is all working beautifully. But also we should go back and do one more test and just check that we can still add a new user and everything works okay for that. That by doing this other fix, we didn't break anything else that was working already. So let's take Jasmine Lennox here. What we've done is we just opened up the applicants file in Notepad and set Jasmine, Tiana, and Joey back to false, so they were all brand new users again. And then we reran our program. So Jazzy's sitting here as false, And so we click the add button, and what will happen then is, yep, it brings up our new form, sets it to record number 4, so that's all good. That's our new record at the moment. And then we're going to click this copy paste button here, and it should grab all of Jazzy's stuff from this top row here, and it's put it in there. It's also counted that we've only got 3 records in our user details at the moment that are registered, and so she needs to be record number 4 to match this one here, so it's done all that. And we clicked our messages to save her and to update the applications, and you can see she's been updated to true. So she's been added as a new user and updated to true, because when that add button was clicked back here at the start, that's when it set that Boolean flag, like the light flashing on the administrator's desk. We're adding a new user, we're adding a new user, and that's how it knew here that it needed to go off and set that stuff to true. So that's all really good, and that's working. So yeah, that was a little fix we had to do, and there's quite a few steps in this deletion process to get everything working a-okay. Now, when we delete someone, we want to go up to the Applicants file actually and change some stuff. And we want to change their ApplRegistered to UDeleted. So their status is that that user has been deleted. All right, so at the end of the existing delete icon coding, so where we double clicked on the red X delete icon, we're just going to add a new subroutine here that's going to go off and update the Applicants file and set that person to UDeleted, okay? So we're also going to pass in, remember how at the very start of this subroutine we saved off the user ID of the person we were deleting? And there was a very important reason for that, because we're going to take that string saved user ID and pass it down into the subroutine we called. Now, this is an interesting thing. We didn't teach you this in functions lesson, but you usually write a function to pass some value down to some other processing, and then you get a value out of that returned. You can also, with a subroutine, actually pass values. We usually write our subroutines, you know, whatever it is, brackets with nothing in it, but you can actually pass a value into a subroutine and it'll come back out of that subroutine as well. So that's a little bit of a sneaky new teaching there on the side in this lesson. And what's going to happen there is, this is the subroutine we're writing, so we need to write in all this code. So it passes in this string saved user ID. And because the DataGrid view consists of rows and columns, there's a double loop we have to use to search all the way through it. Now, we're not going to worry about what column the user ID value is in. We'll just search every single cell box in that DataGrid view, not worrying what column it's in. Let's just do the lot. So let's start on the first row and just check every single column in there. So that's what this double loop's doing. So what it's doing is, the outside the loop, it'll start off on row number 1, and what it'll do then is it'll go through all of the columns in row 1, and it's only going to check to find that saved off user ID for the person that's deleted if we haven't found it yet. So if we have found it, there's no point in checking it again, because this will go all the way through all of the boxes on our DataGrid view. But if we haven't found it yet, if the number of records found is 0, we haven't found it yet, this processing here is going to look in the DataGrid view for the row we're on, like row 1, and cell whatever number we're up to for the column. And this is tricky too, because it suddenly changes its name to cells. Like you think you'd code .rows brackets I, .columns brackets J, but it changes to cells. So that's a little sort of tricky thing you have to know and figure out or remember. And we have to also change the value of that into a string, which is another kind of strange thing you need to know. And you only find these things out by watching other people's videos, Googling, going to Stack Overflow, and doing a lot of work to find out exactly what the code is. Because the first time I coded this, it wouldn't work, because I think I had .columns brackets J or something. And I'm thinking, damn you, I want rows and columns. But then I found in Stack Overflow someone had used cells, and I thought, oh, they must call columns cells when you're doing this sort of stuff, okay? But anyway, if we find that saved user ID while we're just going through all of those boxes systematically that's in the DataGrid view, we want to set that found row into a DataGrid view row, and from that found row we want to extract that row we're up to into there, and then we want to take the first cell, that ApplRegistered, we want to change it into UDeleted. So we're updating that first cell in the row where we found the user ID of the person we've deleted, and we're updating it to UDeleted. Okay, so look, that looks a bit complicated. It's a bit hard to get your head around. It was a little bit hard for us to actually get it working and not erroring, but this does work, and this is how you check a DataGrid view, how you search it. Don't worry about specifying specific columns. Just search for every box in the grid with this double loop and find a match on what you're looking for is the easiest way to do it. And then we have, if we didn't find any records, we need to tell them that wasn't found in the applicants, so deleted user not found. So that's going to be weird. Something's wrong with our system if that happens. And we want to exit out of the subroutine. But, you know, if we haven't exited out of the subroutine because everything was fine, then we can just write it out and update the applicants XML file and give them a message that we've updated to that person that was deleted. We've put their application to now say UDeleted for the status, so we know the user's deleted. And of course we need to test that out. And so what happens is Jasmine here, who we're deleting, okay, tells it's UDeleted. Remember, we've got to click save, and we can see it's changed it up here to UDeleted, all right? And out in the applicants XML file, if you check that, here it is. Jasmine Lennox has now got ApplRegistered UDeleted. She's a deleted user. All right, so that's all working fine. That code we added in to do the double search loop. And what it did was it just went through all these boxes on the form until it found user ID Jazzy, because that would have been the one that was saved off when we were doing the deleting. And then it knew to go to cell 0 here, which was the first one, and to set that to UDeleted. So remember, it's not called column 0, it's called cell 0 when you're doing a search of the DataGrid view. So yeah, that's a bit of learning there. And you might want to even pause the video because we've been going for 40 minutes. Naturally, you'll be adding in this same code and testing it as well, so you can learn how to do all this stuff really properly. And you might want to even take a break at this stage because, you know, we've done a lot of coding and some complicated stuff there. But look, we're building a real system here and it's coming together really well. Like, this is pretty cool that we're getting all these little functions and everything on the nav bar to work. All right, now you wouldn't believe we've still got more to do on the delete function. So what we need to do is now take care of the are you sure if they happen to say no. So we've been looking at, they clicked the red X, and when the are you sure message came up, they said, yep, let's go for it. And they are all the steps we needed to actually delete someone. Now we need to look at what happens if they say, no, we've decided not to delete the user. Okay, so at the moment, we just had this in the else statement in the code for that red X delete click, and we've written in their code for this will be added later. Well, yeah, it's now later and we're going to add it. So this stuff here that's circled that we have in there right at the moment, you need to replace all that, and we're going to expand it all out to do the code now. So user response is no, meaning they want to abort the delete. So set boolean user deleted equals false. We're not going to be deleting the user. Now we need to clear the table and then reload that data table from the last saved XML file. So it's sitting out there in the XML file, the guy we were going to possibly delete, or the girl, and we just need to bring that XML file back in and load up our data table. Now we did this in the writing lesson. We found, hey, it was a real problem trying to get this done. You couldn't just clear all of the boxes are on the screen. You couldn't find the index for the one you deleted, and it was just a nightmare. And we found out that the way to do it is just go me controls clear, and then initialize component to load all your controls back in again. Then whatever your load routine was for that program, and in ours it's called admin form underscore load, you have to put E brackets E so that everything and all the events will get loaded back up again. So it kind of just, it's almost like it sort of, you know, turning a computer on and off again, that sort of type fix, you know, to just clear everything, unload it, then load it all back in again. So that's the same code as we used in a previous lesson, and it does the job. And let's see what job it does. So we tested the no, do not delete the user. When you say that, it'll say record delete cancelled, but it rewinds this file here to the first record. That's just sort of something which happens. But if you flick through using the arrows, you'll see that the one that you were going to delete. Because you said no, it hasn't been deleted. So we tried this out on several users. We flicked through, clicked the red X and said no, we got these messages. And when we looked at our user details file, no one had been deleted, okay? So that abort and saying no was definitely working. No one ended up deleted from the file. And when we use this arrow to flick through all of our records, all 4 of these users were still there. So that backing out and saying no, that all works fine, and that's good. And so off we go. Now, I think this is the last thing we'd have to do, I think, for the delete routine. It certainly ended up a lot of things to do. Gaps in the file, and thus all the numbers are running in ascending sequence. Okay, so immediately above the save icon code, so when we're in that save icon subroutine, down here we've got the stuff to write it out now to the XML file. Just above that, we need to say if we're doing a delete at the moment, so if Boolean user deleted equals true, so if we did say yes and we wanted to delete a record, we just have to renumber all of those user detail records, which are in that memory area that's displaying in a data table at the bottom of our form. Just renumber them all to make sure they're going to be in sequence and there won't be gaps. Because if we're deleting a user in the middle of that file, there's going to be a gap in the sequence numbers afterwards. So this is going to be a separate subroutine we write. And you'll see in the testing what we're talking about here. It might not be clear right now, but we write this separate subroutine. So you need to write all this code in as a subroutine, renumber all the user detail records. So the int row index, it's supposed to be defined as int32, not just integer. We read in the Microsoft documentation. So here we're just dimensioning it as int32 type, that's 0 at the moment. And we're just going to go through each row in that DS users. Well, we've only got one table, which is table number 0. So it's going to go into our data table and it's going to go through all of the rows in the data table. And then this bit turned out to be really tricky, and it took a lot of Googling and a lot of Stack Overflowing because you can't actually sort of specify dtab users. We thought, okay, well, the name of our table is dtab users, so surely we can just reference dtab users in this. But because it's part of a binding source that binds it up to that data set, which is connected up to the external XML file through this binding, and the binding source is kind of like the file handler for VBNet, and because of it, there are, you know, a few little sticky parts you run into, and this happens in any processing language. Look, the file handlers are brilliant because they save you so much coding and so much work. And in this one, we've managed to get that really cool little navigation bar. But sometimes there is some nasty stuff which you just have to deal with. And that's what this was, that you have to reference the binding source and go for that first item, which I think was the first column where that sequence number is. So yeah, in the user details file, the first column or the first field. So this time it's not even called cells. Remember we were talking about how it wasn't called .columns, they called it .cells in the DataGrid view. In this data table here for the binding source, now they call it an item. So what the hell's going on? It was a column, then it was a cell, and now it's an item. But item 0 means the first field or the first sort of column there that we needed to just set that up to be whatever our index row index from the loop was up to at the moment plus 1. Because remember, we're starting at 0 in Visual Basic and our first record won't be record 0, so it won't be int row index. It'll actually be, we want it to be record 1. So it's int row index plus 1. And then because it's a system int32, we need to string it up so it's in a string before we put it into our data table, okay? And then we need to go on and count up to record 2, go back round, set that first field in that next row, which is going to be for record 2, set that up to be record number 2, and so on until it gets to the end of our data table. So yeah, a little loop here to go through and just renumbering the records that are left in the data table after the delete and get them all in numerical order. And this is what we mean, that let's say we had our user details here and we're flicking through them. Number 3 is the system administrator. Number 4 is Tiana. She's the one we're going to delete. And number 5 is Jasmine, okay? So when we delete Tiana, there's going to be a gap in the file. The file's going to run from record 3, the system administrator, and then it's going to skip up to record 5 for Jasmine. So before we save it out, we want to actually renumber everything. So now that Tiana's gone, we've got no record 4, we've got this gap. We need to shuffle Jasmine back one and she can become record 4 now so that we don't have a gap. So when this middle one disappears, there's a gap. That renumbering routine we wrote will fix that gap. And when we test it, that works fine. What happens is that we've clicked the save button and it's done that little routine and the system administrator stayed on number 3 okay, and Jasmine, who was number 5, she's now backed down to number 4 to fill up that gap. So our records in the file just go from 1, 2, 3 and 4 and we don't have any gaps in the sequence numbers, okay? Because otherwise our automatic plus icon for adding records, which just figures out what is the current record number. If there's gaps and stuff, it's all going to mess up. So I've got to make sure those record numbers are all in sequence. All right, so that was just something little fiddly thing that had to be done to make sure those records stay in sequence when you're deleting records in the middle of the file. And whoa, that delete thing's finally finished. So this might be a good time to take a break in the video because we're up to 50 minutes already. My goodness, I hope you're playing it at 1.5x and it hasn't taken you that long to get through it. All right, so we've done that bottom half of the user details form now. We do have to go back and test. We've got to go back and format the email for that later on, but that's the very last thing we're going to do. But basically most of the stuff, 90% of the stuff in that bottom part's finished. And we're going back up the top now into that DataGrid view and doing some work on its navigation bar. So remember up here, it also has a navigation bar of a plus to add a new record, a X to delete, and a save for saving. Now, previously, we'd said not to put a group box around there because, yeah, there was a problem that if you put a group box around and you make the color of that white to match up all nice with our form, when you run it, all these cell boxes have white writing in them on a white background, so you can't see anything. But we actually thought, okay, well, we can't do that, and so we were not going to have a group box. But then we did some Googling and some checking on Stack Overflow, and there was a way around it, which we're going to show you now. So you can have a group box around these DataGrid views. It's just that you have to do some special stuff to achieve that, and that's what we're going to show you how to do now. All right, so because we added that white font group box, all the cells turn white and we can't read what's in them, which is horrible. So you click on that whole DataGrid view thing, and in its properties on the right hand side, there's one called rows default cell style. There's another one I think called just default cell style. There's another one columns default cell style. Make sure you're on rows default cell style. And there's a little thing here which is called the builder. This symbol with 3 dots on it, and you need to click on that 3 dot symbol, and that opens up some panels for you. And the first one you click on is the font. So when you click in here, it has none at the moment, but you can click in there and you can set it to font size 10 because we want it to be a smaller size than 12, like the group box is. That's too big. And we click OK. And then also in that builder that's there, we need to change the fore color. So you click in its box and there'll be a down arrow and you get off the custom tab onto the web tab and just pick black, and it shows you what it's going to look like, and you just say OK. All right, so this big cell style builder will pop up when you click the triple dots. There's 2 things to change in it. The fore color, get that to black, and also this font, see how it says none? This is where we clicked on it and changed it to 10 and said OK, all right? So that'll do all of that. And these settings override those problem settings that get inherited from the group box. So this inheriting thing is a bit of an issue, that everything inside the group box has to be the same as the group box for this inheritance thing, which, look, sometimes can help you because It means if you had a whole bunch of things in, they're just automatically set and styled and you don't have to go and do each one individually. But in this case, it's actually turning out to be a pain and a nuisance for us. Now, we also tried with the column headers default style. So we tried this other property as well and clicked on the triple dots, builder and changed its stuff, but that didn't seem to work. So what happened was, everything worked out nicely here and we could see these now and they were font size 10, but I think we actually went back and changed them to font size 9 because they looked a bit better even smaller, 9, because then you can read the full user password and stuff. But these headings are way too big and using column headers style didn't seem to fix this. Because applicants is 12 here, for some reason these things always want to be font size 12. And this was a real nuisance and a real hassle. But look, in the end, we just found a little tricky fix, a little trick to fix it. What we're going to do is we're just going to go to the group box, and in the group box property, set the font size to 10, okay? And that'll make this smaller. But then we bring out a label on the form and type applicants into it with white writing. And we just carefully slide that applicant label over the top of the group box. So that way all of our headings go down to 10. The applicants, which is actually underneath this label, will be little and 10. But when we push this label over the top of it that's 12, it all looks good, okay? So that's a little fix. So that'll get these down to size 10 and they look beautiful and they all fit in okay. And these guys here, like we said, we actually changed our mind from 10 and set them to 9 just by going back into that rows default style and going from 10 down to 9. So anyway, that got the whole thing working. That was a little bit of messing around. We did heaps of Stack Overflowing to try and solve this inheritance problem. And look, the inheritance problem got solved on the cells, but it just would not get solved on the column headers. And anyway, the quick fix ended up doing that, the label over the top of everything. So there's nothing wrong with that. It all works and that will do us very nicely. All right, now on that applicants processing, we've got that save icon. Now, when would you want to use that? You might want to use that if someone says they've changed their email address or their phone number. We just want to go in the DataGrid view and find out where it is and just type it over and fix it up and then click save to save the applicant record. All right, so this is pretty simple. It's just the usual thing. Because we've got it in a data set that's bound, it's real simple. All you have to do is take the data set that's bound and do a write XML, say grab everything that's in that DataGrid data set and just plonk it out into the output XML file, okay? And so what we did here was a few different things and did saves. We're just showing you them all at once here, but we went and changed Sharon's phone number and did a save. We went and changed Tiana's phone number and did a save. Dougie Dimwit with this had a dimwit excuse about why he wanted to apply. He just seemed like a spammer or a troll, so we've rejected him. So we just typed "you rejected" as the status in here, so it gets sorted down to the bottom of the file. And yeah, we put that in there and it tells us that everything was updated and saved okay. And when we go and look at the actual records of things we were changing and saving, we did like 3 different changes, 3 different saves here. They've all worked out okay. Like Tiana's now got that 333 number, Sharon's number ends in 000, and poor old Dougie Dimwood, who said, "Oh, don't know really," for his reason for wanting to join up. Yeah, well, no hopers that don't know, we don't want them, so we've just set him to "you rejected." So that's all sweet. We've got that save icon working there on our data grid, so you can go in and change anything on the data grid you like. So if this was another system where you had a list of your products and their prices, you could just go in and change prices and stuff and then save it, and that's your prices file saved and updated really easily because using DataGrid View and a bound data source. So that's a really cool thing to use in applications. Now, the delete and the plus icons that are in that navigation bar, we don't need them because for adding a new user application, remember we built that whole special screen to do it, where we've got validation to make sure they've typed in a 10-digit phone number. We've got validation to make sure there's an @ sign in the email address that they enter and all of that stuff. So look, if the system administrator really needed to add someone on, he could just go and use that application add screen and do it, all right? So we don't need that plus sign, and we don't need the delete sign, because we're not going to be deleting applicants. That's our kind of history log file where we keep track of everyone who's ever applied, and if someone is deleted, we just set them to UDeleted, and if their application fails, we just set them to URejected, but they always stay in that applicant's file, just so we've got a history of everything that happened in our log file. But so we don't want to do any delete, so you click on the delete icon on that navigation bar, and then you get this thing enabled, all right? And at the moment it is enabled, so we just click on that and it'll turn the tick off. And likewise, you click into the plus sign, I think you right click and just click on enabled, and then both of those should get no ticks on the enabled, so they'll be disabled, and what will happen on that nav bar is that they'll now be grayed out and you can't use them. All right, so the only thing we want to do with applicants is just change their phone number or their email if they ask for it to be changed, or change their password if they want that changed, and save it. Right, we're not going to need to add new applicants. We've got a whole special form screen to do that. And we're not going to delete people either, because we want to keep this as a log history. Now, if something was messed up and the admin person really needed to delete it, they could just go in and edit the applicant's XML file. I mean, they're a system administrator. They know how to manually edit a file and not mess it up. So I think this is one of the last things. I hope it is, because this has gone for a long time, this video. So what if someone kind of emails and says, hey, I forgot my password, or someone found out my password and I need to change it straight away. How could the administrator do that? So Barry, user ID Bazza, his password was BazzaBoy1234, but he wants to change it to BazzaBoy45s, because that's going to be easier to remember, and someone figured out this password and, I don't know, knows it or something like that. So all we have to do is, in the applicants, we just set it to BazzaBoy555 and click save. And in the registered users, we find Bazza and we just change it to BazzaBoy555 and click save. Now, we could have, just changed it here and had a save thing which went over and automatically found Bazza in here and changed it in here as well to keep them both exactly in sync. But remember, this person doing it's a system administrator, so they should be very familiar and go, oh yeah, look, I've got to change it here and I've got to change it down there, and just let them know that it's been changed, all right? But you could automate that processing if you wanted to. They just change it here. When they click save, it's automatically changed up there as well, because we've seen how to do that in the lesson. So when you check out the external applicants file, that XML file, Bazza is now BazzaBoy555. When you check, more importantly, the user details file, which is going to determine whether he can log into the system or not, his password there now is changed as well to BazzaBoy555. So we can do a password change. We've got our system fixed up for that as well. And we're on to the last thing at last, which is to set up when a new person is joined up and you've just put them in, the administrators put them in and added them in, and that's all good. We just want to automatically make this little email that we can send out to them. So on your form, down the bottom here, we've got registered users. Add a button that says create email and another one that says close email. And you might have to make the form a little bit wider to do this, but we want to have a rich text box in here. So this is a rich text box that you drag out from your tools and put that in there. And we want to first make the code for when the create email button is clicked. So this is going to be visible false, so that while we're doing all our other functions, there's just a blank empty section down that right hand corner of the form. And when they click create email, then we want this to appear, and we want the system to automatically just format the email and put all the stuff into here for them. All right, so this is the code we need to do that. Double click that create email button. First thing it will do is it's actually going to format everything up. Then it'll set the text box, that rich text box, RTB email.text, that's what that text box needs to be named, by the way, if we forgot to mention that, .visible equals true. So then it's going to show all this stuff in that text box. It'll pop up on the screen. But what we do is we just make a text email content string, and we're going to format everything up. So we'll just have a subject. They can copy and paste out for the subject, show up. We want a blank line, so just some spaces. VB, carriage reload line feed just makes a new line. On this line, it's going to say hi with a space. Then we can get the username off the form. So we can get, whoever it is, out of that text box on the form. Just get the text that's in there and just add on a space with a comma, and then we're going to have do a new line, a blank. Your application's been successful. You're now set up to use it, a blank line. Login details are as follows. User ID, and then we can get the user ID out of that text box on the form and show it to them. And we can get the password straight out of the text box as well, and then just a finishing line like that. And once all this is formatted up and stuff, then just move it over into that rich text box and make that text box visible. So let's see how that works out. Jasmine has just been added on as a new user, and we say create email for her, and here's the email. So that'll be the subject. They copy and paste into their Gmail, Hotmail, or Outlook, whatever they're using to send this off to the user. They'll be able to get her email address from up here. Maybe we should have had that pasted in as well. But anyway, they'll be able to get it up from there. And it's just going to say, hi, Jasmine, your application. So see, it's found her name off here and put it in. It's got a user ID and password and put them in okay in this section of the email. So that's ready for the system administrator to just drag his mouse across that, do Control-C, his or her mouse, do Control-C, and they can Control-V that into their email app. Now we just need to do something for the close email, because after they've done all that, then we just need to make that disappear because we're finished. So on the close email button, double click that, and it's just setting the text box, the rich text box, back to nothing in it, and making it visible false, so it disappears off the screen. And when we check that out, it was there with the email. Click close email for Jasmine, bang, that email box and all of its contents is gone. So we've done a lot of changes there. Most of them were to the admin form. But there was an issue where the admin ID, yes, okay, so we're doing a full regression test. Now we're going to show you we won't show you the results for all this because this video is so long already, but we just checked out whether Sharon could log in, and she got taken to the main menu for the tennis dream team. That all worked fine. We added just some new applicant using the applicant screen, so the add new. Then we got on as the system administrator, logged on and set that new applicant into a registered user. We changed their password and saved it, and then we just deleted that new applicant out to check that it was left out, disappeared from the user details file, checked that no worked first, that it aborted out, then said yes and actually did it. And also in the applicants, it got set to UDeleted, so that all worked fine. But we did find one issue while we were doing that, and that's that the admin user ID wasn't cleared from the login screen, which is kind of a bit of a security risk. So we'll try and explain this to you. What happens is if you log in, click the admin and log in as admin and put the password in and stuff and go off and do admin stuff and then finish that. Then you come back in and click login because you want to log in to test out that that user you just activated actually works. What'll happen is when you've clicked login, it goes to the login screen, but the administrator user ID and password's just sitting there for anyone to grab and use and go to the administration screen. So that wasn't good. So we just had to add some code in here that when we're figuring out what screen they're going to be taken to, if it's someone who's the admin person logging in at the moment, we just need to clear out this stuff so that next time it's not going to be sitting there if it's just a regular user, and do the same thing if it's the administrator. So when we're getting to this stage where we decide we're going to show them the Dream Team main menu or we're going to take them to the admin form, the first time they come in, make sure we clear it out so the next time somebody else comes into the login screen, their particular details aren't still hanging around on that screen, okay? So we just had to clear them out once they've logged on the first time, so it's not hanging around later, and that all worked and that was good. So look, we wanted to make a lot more in this lesson. We did want to have some search and filter functions, so you could put in a particular user's name and click, and then bang, it would just wind forward to where that user was and show their details in either the applicants or the registered users. But look, we haven't got time to do that. And we also want to do a filter, so it just showed all of the registered false users and didn't show any of the others, so the system administrator could just concentrate on the new ones if they wanted to. But look, we might get time to do some lessons on that sort of thing later on, whether it'll be adding on to this system or doing as part of something else we're doing. But yeah, these search and filter functions for data tables and data grid views is something we need to cover sometime and show you how to do. As a challenge task, you might want to find out how to do that yourself. Just be warned, it'll probably take a bit of Googling, a bit of watching some other people's YouTube videos, and a bit of searching the Stack Overflow website to get all these things working, because even me kind of, look, I'm not an expert on VBNet. I've done a lot of programming, but I'm no expert on VBNet yet. And even I've ran into problems, you know, because like I was telling you, sometimes it's called columns, sometimes it's called cells, sometimes it's called items, and those things were tripping me up and my code wasn't working, and I had to go to Stack Overflow to remember and see exactly what the correct syntax or way of doing it was. Now remember, the YouTube videos are all there on our YouTube channel, but the actual storage area for the course is on the Passy World of ICT programming website. So you can go to that programming website and see all the lessons we've done, click on them to get to the videos, because YouTube just ends up all over the place. It's got the first few ones from our playlist. Down lower, it's got all the uploads we've ever done. It can be hard to find something you're looking for and to know what order you should be doing all of our programming course in. So if you go to the website and check out the programming page here by clicking programming, that'll show you everything in order. So whew, that has been a long video, and thanks for watching along with us, and thanks for all the people that are subscribing to the channel, people that are sending back either just liking videos or sending back positive feedback to us. We've had emails from people that have just been thanking us so much, teachers and students, just for having these videos up and how they've helped them out so much. They are long videos because we go into depth and try and explain everything to you. Watch them at 1.5x or 1.75x. So like this video if you found it helpful. And it's best to subscribe to our channel so you see each time when a new video comes out. Now, next weekend, we're really busy because it's exam week at our day job at the school we teach at. And we're going to have hundreds of exams to correct and things like that. So there's going to be absolutely no time to make a video. So there might not be a video for the next 2 weeks, possibly even 3 weeks, but we're hoping it'll only be 2 weeks till we do give you our next video. Until then, enjoy programming with Visual Basic, and we'll see you in the next lesson.